Hi, 5th grade! So, I am going to read you the next 2 chapters of My Father's Dragon, and then afterwards, so wait till the end, I'm going to show you a couple other books that could be options for our next read-aloud book, and I'm going to let you guys vote. So, for now, let's keep reading. As you know, his father just landed on Cranberry, and that means that we are about to get into Chapter 4. Chapter 4. My Father Finds the River. The jungle began just beyond a narrow strip of beach. Thick, dark, damp, scary jungle. My father hardly knew where to go, so he crawled under a wahoo bush to think, and ate 8 tangerines. The first thing to do, he decided, was to find the river, because the dragon was tied somewhere along its bank. Then he thought, if the river flows into the ocean, I ought to be able to find it quite easily if I just walk along the beach far enough. So my father walked until the sun rose, and he was quite far from the ocean rocks. It was dangerous to stay near them because they might be guarded in the daytime. He found a clump of tall grass and sat down. Then he took off his rubber boots and ate 3 more tangerines. He could have eaten 12, but he hadn't seen any tangerines on this island, and he could not risk running out of something to eat. My father slept all that day and only woke up late in the afternoon when he heard a funny little voice saying, "Strange, strange, what a dear little duck! I mean, dear, dear, what a strange little rock!" My father saw a tiny paw rubbing itself on his knapsack. He lay very still, and the mouse, for it was a mouse, hurried away muttering to itself, I must smell somebody. I must tell somebody." My father waited a few minutes and then started down the beach because it was almost dark now, and he was afraid the mouse really would tell somebody. He walked all night, and 2 scary things happened. First, he just had to sneeze, so he did, and someone close by said, "Is that you, monkey?" My father said, "Yes." Then the voice said, "You must have something on your back, monkey." And my father said, "Yes," because he did. He had his knapsack on his back. "What do you have on your back, monkey?" asked the voice. My father didn't know what to say because what would a monkey have on its back? And how would it sound telling someone about it if it did have something? Just then another voice said, "I bet you're taking your sick grandmother to the doctor's." My father said yes and hurried on. Quite by accident, he found out later that he had been talking to a pair of tortoises. The second thing that happened was that he nearly walked right between 2 wild boars who were talking in low, solemn whispers. When he first saw the dark shapes, he thought they were boulders. Just in time, he heard one of them say, "There are 3 signs of a recent invasion. First, fresh tangerine peels were found under the wahoo bush near the ocean rocks. Second, a mouse reported an extraordinary rock some distance from the ocean rocks, which upon further investigation simply wasn't there. However, more fresh tangerine peels were found in the same spot, which is the 3rd sign of invasion. Since tangerines do not grow on our island, somebody must have brought them across the ocean rocks from the other island, which may or may not have something to do with the appearance and or disappearance of the extraordinary rock reported by the mouse." After a long silence, the other boar said, "You know, I think we're taking all this too seriously. Those peels probably floated over here all by themselves, and you know how unreliable mice are. Besides, if there had been an invasion, I would have seen it." "Perhaps you're right," said the first boar. "Shall we retire?" Whereupon they both trundled back into the jungle. Well, that taught my father a lesson, and after that he saved all his tangerine peels. He walked all night and toward morning came to the river. Then his troubles really began. Chapter 5. My Father Meets Some Tigers. The river was very wide and muddy, and the jungle was very gloomy and dense. The trees grew close to each other, and what room there was between them was taken up by great high ferns with sticky leaves. My father hated to leave the beach, but he decided to start along the riverbank where at least the jungle wasn't quite so thick. He ate 3 tangerines, making sure to keep all the peels this time, and put on his rubber boots. My father tried to follow the riverbank, but it was very swampy, and as he went farther, the swamp became deeper. When it was almost as deep as his boot tops, he got stuck in the oozy, mucky mud. My father tugged and nearly pulled his boots right off, but at last he managed to wade to a drier place. Here the jungle was so thick that he could hardly see where the river was. He unpacked his compass and figured out the direction he should walk in order to stay near the river. But he didn't know that the river made a very sharp curve away from him just a little way beyond, and so as he walked straight ahead, he was getting farther and farther away from the river. It was very hard to walk in the jungle. The sticky leaves of the ferns caught at my father's hair, and he kept tripping over roots and rotten logs. Sometimes the trees were clumped so closely together that he couldn't squeeze between them and had to walk a long way around. He began to hear whispery noises, but he couldn't see any animals anywhere. The deeper into the jungle he went, the surer he was that something was following him. And then he thought he heard whispery noises on both sides of him as well as behind. He tried to run, but he tripped over more roots, and the noises only came nearer. Once or twice he thought he heard something laughing at him. At last he came out into a clearing and ran right into the middle of it so that he could see anything that might try to attack him. Was he surprised when he looked and saw 14 green eyes coming out of the jungle all around the clearing, and when the green eyes turned into 7 tigers. The tigers walked around him in a big circle, looking hungrier all the time, and then they sat down and began to talk. "I suppose you thought we didn't know you were trespassing in our jungle." Then the next tiger spoke. "I suppose you're going to say you didn't know it was our jungle." "Did you know that not one explorer has ever left this island alive?" said the third tiger. My father thought of the cat and knew this wasn't true, but of course he had too much sense to say so. One doesn't contradict a hungry tiger. The tigers went on talking in turn. "You're our first little boy, you know. I'm curious to know if you're especially tender." "Maybe you think we have regular meal times, but we don't. We just eat whenever we're feeling hungry," said the 5th tiger. "And we're very hungry right now. In fact, I can hardly wait," said the 6th. "I can't wait," said the 7th tiger. And then all the tigers said together in a loud roar, "Let's begin right now!" And they moved in closer. My father looked at those 7 hungry tigers, and then he had an idea. He quickly opened his knapsack and took out the chewing gum. The cat had told him that tigers were especially fond of chewing gum, which was very scarce on the island. So he threw them each a piece, but they only growled. "As fond as we are of chewing gum, we're sure we'd like you even better." And they moved so close that he could feel them breathing on his face. "But this is very special chewing gum," said my father. "If you keep on chewing it long enough, it will turn green. And then if you plant it, it will grow more chewing gum. And the sooner you start chewing, the sooner you'll have more." The tigers said, "Why, you don't say. Isn't that fine?" And as each one wanted to be the first to plant the chewing gum, they all unwrapped their pieces and began chewing as hard as they could. Every once in a while, one tiger would look into another's mouth and say, "No, it's not done yet," until finally they were all so busy looking into each other's mouths to make sure that no one was getting ahead that they forgot all about my father. And tomorrow I can read to you about my father meeting a rhinoceros. But I wanted to mention to you that because this is not a very long book, I thought it'd be good if we planned ahead for our next read-aloud book. Now, I am limited to the books I have at home, but I As you know, I'm an avid book collector. In fact, I can show you a little bit of my library. So I have some travel and self-help, like betterment classics, religious books, literature, and writing books. These are some of MJ's mysteries and some like cookbooks and collection stuff. I also have a bunch of books that were given to me that I still want to read. I have more literature classics. I have more of my mysteries, because I really do like mysteries a lot. And then I have books that I've saved from when I was younger. So all of these down here at the bottom are books that I read when I was maybe around your age or up through middle school. A few in high school maybe, but not that many. And I kept them because I knew that they were good and that I'd always want to read them. And I do. I'll double back and read them sometimes. But I have chosen a select few that I think might be interesting for us as read-aloud books. So here are the options. The Egypt Game. I have definitely mentioned this to you guys before. I think it's a phenomenal book. And I think it would be really fun as a book for us to read. I know I mentioned another book by the same author, but unfortunately I don't own William S. and the Great Escape, so I would have to order it, I guess, if I was going to read it for a read aloud at home. Love Among the Walnuts. This one is a bit of a goofier one, about a bunch of people in, quote, a loony bin. Harmless, creative, goofy people, but there's a mystery and it's very fun. Holes. Some of you might have read this before or heard about the movie. It is a silly, and not silly, it is a very out there concept for a book, but it's very fascinating the way they fit together some of the past story and the modern day story. The Sisters Grimm. Now this one, it's been a while since I read, but I kept it, which means it must have been a good one. And it kind of is a twist on fairy tales. I know you guys really enjoyed doing the Rumpelstiltskin series, so I thought maybe this would be fun. And of course, and I'm not positive about this one only because I know that I can't do a successful British accent. I will never be as good of a reader for this book as Jim Dale. Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. I mean, I also have the Sorcerer's Stone. They're the same. It's just what they call it. Fun, but I know a lot of you have read it, so maybe not read aloud material. So I would say keep that in mind when you're voting. So I'm going to read you the descriptions for the books that I just introduced, and then you can message me if you follow the class Instagram, or over Remind if your parents have it, or over email to vote for which book you would like for me to read next. So, The Egypt Game. The first time Melanie Ross meets April Hall, she's not sure they have anything in common, but she soon discovers that they both love anything to do with ancient Egypt. When they stumble upon a deserted storage yard behind the A to Z Antiques and Curio Shop, Melanie and April decide it's the perfect spot for the Egypt Game. Before long, there are 6 Egyptians instead of 2. After school and on weekends, they all meet to wear costumes, hold ceremonies, and work on their secret code. Everyone thinks it's just a game, until strange things begin happening to the players. Has the Egypt Game gone too far? This one's so good. Okay. Let's see. What did I do next? Love Among the Walnuts. Alexander Huntington Ackerman, AHA, or Sandy for short, didn't expect his whole life to be a free ride, even though his parents are multimillionaires and he lives in a mansion. He certainly didn't expect his 2 money-grubbing uncles to try to kill everyone with a drugged birthday cake. Luckily for Sandy, the cake only sends his parents and their pet chicken Adela into comas. Along with his loyal butler and a wacky nurse from Walnut Manor, the loony bin next door, Sandy is determined to bring the scoundrels to rights, if he's not the next to go. So as you can tell, it's like there's a mystery, but it's goofy. Okay. Holes. Stanley Yelnats is under a curse. A curse that began with his no-good, dirty, rotten, pig-stealing great-great-grandfather, and has since followed generations of Yelnats. Now, Stanley has been unjustly sent to a boys' detention center, Camp Green Lake, where the boys build character by spending all day, every day, digging holes exactly 5 feet wide and 5 feet deep. There is no lake at Camp Green Lake, but there are an awful lot of holes. It doesn't take long for Stanley to realize there's more than character improvement going on at Camp Green Lake. The boys are digging holes because the warden is looking for something. But what could be buried under a dried-up lake? Stanley tries to dig up the truth in this inventive and darkly humorous tale of crime and punishment and redemption. I'm realizing there's a theme here. I have a lot of mystery stuff going on. I think this one might be too. The Sisters Grimm. Oh, it's a series. Huh. The Fairy Tale Detectives is the series, and this is the Sisters Grimm. For Sabrina and Daphne Grimm, life hasn't been a fairy tale. After the mysterious disappearance of their parents, the sisters are sent to live with their grandmother, a woman they believed was dead. Granny Relda reveals that the girls have 2 famous ancestors, the Brothers Grimm, whose classic book of fairy tales is actually a collection of case files of magical mischief. Now the girls must take on the family responsibility of being fairy tale detectives. Their first case, a roller coaster ride of an adventure to stop a giant from destroying their new hometown. Alright, so basically, I think mysteries are my thing. And we've got 4 really good mysteries here. So I will put the names of all of these books and their authors in the description. Message me your choice. If you've watched this far, thank you. And I'll talk to you guys later. Oh, and here's a Colby update. He is once again napping. Colby!